Okay. Good morning, and welcome to Planet Dialogue 2025. It actually gives me great pleasure to welcome all speakers, panelists, and our esteemed guests to the third edition of Planet Dialogue organized by CogniSphere Solutions Limited. Actually, as I look around the room and the day's agenda, I can foresee that I think the proceedings are going to be highly insightful and I think solutions driven. And that excites me a lot because, even at 60 years of age, I'm very keen to find solutions to varied challenges and odd problems that I'm faced with. Be it the daily crossword or how to improve my handicap at golf, or why are we intent on destroying our nature and environment, even at the cost of our own existence? My sense is that today's dialogue and conversations will definitely bring us closer to addressing and beginning to solve the climate issues that face us. So let's get started. And as we get started, I would request our keynote speakers, Mr. Amarjeet Sinha and Mr. Ravi Sundararajan, to please join us on the stage. Morning, sir. Morning. Come. Morning. Please. Okay. Special welcome to you, Mr. Sinha and Mr. Sundararajan. Thanks for joining us. Okay, as we start, my thoughts go back to Mahatma Gandhi, who in his own wisdom had stated, there is enough for everybody's needs, but not enough for everybody's greed. I think that reality is now threatening our future. I believe maybe even our existence like never before. So as we look to join the US 5 trillion economies club and become the fourth biggest economy in the world, we have also added 31 individuals to the Billionaires Club. In the process, we are faced with a reality that 1% individuals, only 1% individuals own 40.1% of India's wealth. And 99% have access to only 59.9% of our wealth and resources. Besides the income inequity that we are faced with, there is also serious degradation of our ecology that we have caused in our pursuit to derive maximum benefits from our natural resources like soil, water, forests, air, minerals, etc. The global south, which hosts the majority of the world's population, bears a disproportionate burden of climate change, despite contributing the least to the greenhouse gas emissions. And therefore, the short-term impacts are manifested through food insecurity, loss of livelihoods, and large-scale displacement. The long-term effects, in fact, are multifaceted and profound, ranging from increased social inequality, resource scarcity, and conflict to the loss of biodiversity and heightened health risks. In this context, India, with its varied geography and ecosystems, a variety of nature-based solutions tailored to the local context can potentially offer sustainable solutions for tackling India's climate challenges and their impact on food security and rural livelihoods. And that is why we are here to discuss debottlenecking nature-based solution sector for the benefit of smallholder farmers. But I must tell you, before we begin, that CogniSphere Solutions Limited, who's hosting the event, focuses on creating and implementing large-scale nature-based solutions that deliver measurable and lasting impact. Over the last 3 years of its work, it has implemented plantations and afforestation across 9,500 hectares of degraded land belonging to smallholder farmers. It seeks to, in fact, add 3,000 to 4,000 hectares of plantation every year going forward in the underserved and barren landscapes of the country. So besides helping address carbonization issues on a large scale, these trees also have could potentially provide around 1 to 1.5 lakhs of annual income to more than 4,000 farmers in the next 3 to 4 years, which is about, in the next 3 to 4 years, a lakh and a lakh and a half income per annum. So with a steadfast commitment to environment stewardship and social progress, CSL is looking to drive transformative change on a global scale, built on the back of scientific excellence, innovative solutions, and transparent communication that deliver measurable results and local impact. Planet Dialogue is in fact a platform to bring together stakeholders, cutting across civil societies, registries, business, government, and academia. And we have representatives from all over today. So thanks for joining us. And this is to build a better understanding of the impending challenges of climate change, the contributing factors, its impact, and strategies to mitigate and adapt to the same. The intent of the initiative is to evolve workable solutions to climate change issues facing our planet. So welcome again to Planet Dialogue 2025. Planet Dialogue 2025 actually marks the third edition of the annual flagship event, curated by CogniSphere Solutions Limited. This year's theme, as I mentioned, debottlenecking the nature-based solutions sector for the benefit of smallholder farmers, seeks to address the urgent need to enhance institutional capacities, mobilize and deploy climate finance, and create institutional ecosystems to build synergy in actions around nature-based solutions. The event will feature, as you would have seen, two keynotes addresses by two vastly experienced and eminent professionals in the field, 4 on-ground experiences of organizations that have practiced nature-based solutions, and 2 panels following that, which will deliberate on the issues and challenges and possible solutions and policy recommendations for scaling nature-based solutions, obviously in the context of climate change issues faced by smallholder farmers. So that is from me as of now, and without further ado, and I'm hoping that while you might see a lot of me during the course of the day, you won't hear too much of me from here on. But I think this is the time where we kind of bring in and start off with our keynote speakers. I have huge excitement and gratitude in welcoming Mr. Amarjeet Sinha to the dais first. Mr. Amarjeet Sinha was advisor to the Prime Minister of India till July 31, 2021, on matters relating to social sector and rural development. An IAS officer of the Bihar cadre of 1983 batch, he retired in December 2019, and retired is, I think, is a bad word for us to use in relation to him, but he retired in December 2029 from the government as Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. He has committed a lifetime to working in transforming lives and livelihoods of the deprived households through human well-being. Mr. Sinha has the unique distinction of having played a major role in designing the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, the National Rural Health Mission, Gram Swaraj Abhiyan. Mr. Sinha has taught in many public policy schools in India and published books and articles on public policy, including his latest publication, which some of you might have read, The Last Mile, Turning Public Policy Upside Down. So it'll be interesting to see what Mr. Sinha will turn upside down today. Welcome, Mr. Sinha.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction. It's a subject on which I was wondering, why have I been invited? Because I'm sure there are many more people who have far more knowledge of climate action and how it is currently rolling out. When I started deliberating and thinking and reading more and more to understand the themes a little better, while I had familiarity with the challenges, but to see it in theoretical formulations and to see it in terms of a policy or a rollout of programs, that is what this opportunity to be a keynote speaker gave me. This gave me a chance to deep dive and see and understand from the experiential learning that we gather over the years, to see where it connects with what we are trying to do. The journey began many years ago, more than 40 years ago, 42 years ago. And I still remember my initial days in Jharkhand. I used to be a block development officer during my training in a place called Churchu. Some of you would have heard about it. I think Pradhan does work in Hazaribagh. And thereafter in the Saranda, Porahat, Kolhan forest regions, Chakradharpur, Singhbhum, Chaibasa. Now this was a time, again, I think the climate challenge or the environmental challenges struck me very early in my official career, because these were times, I'm talking about the mid 80s, early 90s, when across many states, there were World Bank funded projects which were trying to replace mixed forests with teak plantations, leading to public protest and a lot of agitations. The area of Jharkhand, where I was posted in, had become infamous for police firings almost repeatedly every year, because the local communities thought that as an intervention which is not in their interest. They always argued that Sal is a full ecosystem. It allows for undergrowth. It allows for many things. Sagwan or teak, one, their argument was that it's not a natural region for teak, and two, that it has very little undergrowth. So I think some of these lessons were very early. That region was faced with a very huge challenge of a forest felling movement as a protest movement by local tribals, cutting down forests, saying that if our sentiments and our perspectives are not respected, we will not be party to saving forests. Now, in that kind of a situation, one, of course, it's always a very tricky situation. A tricky situation because the sentiments run high. The lack of communication is very high. Public order challenges are there. So as somebody wanting to understand the problem a little better, I began in a very simple way by trying to first learn the local tribal dialect, the Ho tribal dialect. Then I realized that that is a passage to their hearts. If you can speak that language, it creates a beginning. Now, many of you would know that Kolhan region of Jharkhand was a self-governed region. They had the traditional headmen. It was neither directly under the British administration, nor was it a princely state. The Kolhan estate had a very unique position where the Mankis and the Mundas, the traditional tribal leaders, used to manage the affairs of the region. So when we were faced with lots of challenges, we decided that on the subject of forest conservation, let us have a dialogue with the Mankis and Mundas. And I still recall in the Tata College in Chaibasa, where 350 of these Manki Mundas together, and we're debating over and over and over and over again on how to tackle the challenges. A few comments which they made have stuck with me. And one of them was कि जंगल प्राकृतिक होता है, लगाया नहीं जाता है. That forests are natural and you cannot plant forests. You can have sapling plantations, but you can't have, these are absolutely natural. The other thing, coming from traditional tribal leaders, why are you getting into plantations? Just carry out silvicultural operations, the natural forests will regenerate again. The next, again, something which came very strongly from them. I still remember Father Bogart, who used to be at the Xavier Institute in Ranchi at that time. Even he was invited for this consultation. They came up after a lot of deliberation saying that what is happening is, even in village forest areas, joint forest management, we save trees. But when the trees start growing up, then you tell us that this is not your right, that is not your right. So we want a covenant with the people. Let's have a covenant with the people. What is it that you'll allow me 10 years later, and what is it that you will not allow me? Now, these were some elements of possible way forwards. Whenever I travel to the interior parts of that area, Porangir, Serengda, many areas where Pradhan now works, beyond Sonua, Goilkeda, Manoharpur belt. One question which used to come from local communities very often, कि हम तो जंगल बचा रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके एवज में हमें आप क्या कर रहे हो? What are you giving me for this? Are you giving me anything for this? So I fight the animals, I fight wildlife, I do everything else, but I'm not able to educate my children, or I'm not able to have a better quality of life. To me, that is the essence and core of the challenge that we are facing. Do we recognize the contributions of those who contribute? Do we compensate them for what they contribute? Do they who make use or who do more of the carbon release realize that they are able to carry on like that simply because there are communities which continue to save forest as part of their traditions? I think a cogent answer is needed to this issue. Day before yesterday, I was in Meghalaya addressing the civil servants on the Civil Service Day. And in the course of deliberations, and many of you would be familiar with that, I don't know how many of you know that in Meghalaya, all the land belongs to the community. As a consequence, even in regions which have natural forests, governments make a per acre payment to the local community for the land that is held. Because land, all land, including your reserve, protected, all kinds of forests, they're all part of the community because the ownership is with the community. And in lieu of that protection to the forest, on a per acre basis, the Meghalaya government has to pay to those communities. Now, I'm just relating some of these examples because the answers to what we wish to tackle will probably lie in the detail. One small little problem with the climate action, in fact, the organization I work for, the Center for Social and Economic Progress, there's a large vertical working on climate action. Saroj is aware we have together been working on 6 volumes of micro studies on experiential learning. One of them is on climate action and justice. When I started going through many of these micro studies, what gets thrown up is the fact that we always made the climate debate very esoteric and there. The glacier is melting there, not here. Till it started affecting our lives directly. The irregularity of the precipitation pattern, full seasons rain within 18 hours and so on. Once these disturbances started affecting lives and livelihoods more directly, that's where I think our realization that something is not working, something is going wrong. So friends, clearly the subject that you've chosen for deliberation needs immediate attention, but needs attention in the local context. It's important to say that because I see very few voices which build the climate debate on the basis of local action, understanding the perspectives of communities before they launch on a major program. It is in this context that I'd like to present before you the findings, the studies, and what they indicate, and what very quietly, but a lot of what you've mentioned, I remember in the document that you've circulated, you've mentioned a figure which says that nature-based solutions require 90,000 crores, and currently what is being spent is 20,000 crores. There's a statement in the document that you have shared. I have issues on this. And my issue is that often we don't realize some of what has been happening in the course of normal programs, they may be contributing much more to what you wish to do. The Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is a case in mind. I would refer all of you to the 2018 study by Dr. Manoj Kumar Panda and the team from the Institute of Economic Growth. It's a national assessment of interventions for marginal and small farmers with regard to water conservation under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Randomly, 29 districts in the whole country were selected, and this study covers a large number of villages, sites, communities to understand what is it that they were doing and what those changes brought about. Before that, it will be useful to mention how small little tweaking can create climate action in a much more powerful way. Small things, reserving 60% of the resources under the Mahatma Gandhi Narega in 2015 only for agriculture and allied activities. Clearly, the message was very clear and strong that many interventions which have hitherto not been tried on scale, there is a case for doing it. The focus on farm ponds, more than 3 million farm ponds have come up over the last about 10, 12 years. The focus on irrigation wells, which had been there all the while. We have the study on Jharkhand, the wells component under Narega. We are also aware about the work which was done in Madhya Pradesh, where those who were given irrigation wells under the MGNREGS were also the farmers who were supported for a lot of new agricultural initiatives. The other change was with regard to individual beneficiary schemes. Now, what are these individual beneficiary schemes? Programs like MGNREGS, it was always thought that only thing that we need to do is community assets. While there was a provision for individual assets accounted for 24% of all the works taken up under MGNREGS. Today, it accounts for 68%. Why was this change necessary? I would say this has been a far greener, natural, nature-based solution than many others. Because a lot more thrust, which came as a consequence on very small initiatives like farm ponds, like dug wells, like animal resource sheds, dairy shed, poultry shed. And the dairy shed in turn, if you go to Sikkim, for example, the organic agriculture of Sikkim, where is it fired from? It is fired from these dairy sheds under the MGNREGS, and where biofertilizer and biopesticide is made on scale. A lot of efforts in Andhra Pradesh for natural farming would never have taken off, never, if it was not for the initiatives on water bodies, both community and individual, on scale in that state. So clearly, a lot of what appears very small, but that again, it had its weaknesses as well, as even Dr. Panda's study points out, that the scientific approach is a comprehensive ridge to valley. We saw that comprehensive approach being tried out in Rajasthan very systematically few years ago. It's been reintroduced now. But when it was carried out systematically, the scientific survey of for a comprehensive initiative of water conservation, which looked at not only the financial resources available, but what needed to be done. The Mukhyamantri Jal, what was it called? Mukhyamantri Jal some Shivir. Shivir is a lot Shiver, as in Maharashtra, because the Maharashtra one never worked. It never worked correctly. The CAG's audit also points out, because science did not back it. Rajasthan was backed by science. Because when they did the comprehensive planning for a ridge to valley comprehensive treatment, they don't look at financial resources. They just looked at what needed to be done. They called it their way of drought proofing. The results can be seen even now. It was very impactful. But I'm mentioning this because in very small ways, the rise of the marginal and small farmers, and this is the other bit of it, which also, I would say, contributes towards the nature-based solutions, the way it is moving in many parts of the country. Chhattisgarh's Forest Right Act areas where Saroj has had a chance to work, I've had a chance to visit very regularly to see what was happening there. A lot of what you call as the kind of agriculture that we should practice is there in place. The use of biofertilizer and biopesticides on scale has been possible in many of those areas. So the other component here, which I think it's important to take note of, we often miss it in our deliberations, If the female labor force participation rate in India is rising, what does it signify? Now, I think I did a deep dive to understand that and have published on the subject. I would like to share with you why this is happening. Some of the answer of unrecognized female labor getting recognized as a consequence of the rural livelihood mission, the efforts of organizations like Pradhan and others, is clearly visible on scale. We all know that agriculture, bulk of it, more than half of it, some say 60%, some say 80%, were always managed by women if you include animal resources as well. But unfortunately, for various reasons of succession and transfer of properties, agricultural land transfers to the women of the house was not there in many places, most places, for fear of fragmentation of land. So you had women doing agriculture, but agriculture census would say only 11% women are there in the agriculture sector. 11% of farming is by women. The fact is that more than 70% are women. Men have gone to cities for search of work. It is the women who are doing the agricultural operations, the animal resource rearing, and so on. What NRLM and MGNREGS together did, MGNREGS because it pays a wage rate which is lower than the market wage, it led to a feminization of labor. There are more women working in Narega. Men have gone for higher paid jobs somewhere else. Now, because of this phenomena, nationally today, 58% of those who work in Narega are women. Along with this, the Rural Livelihood Mission and the access to credit in rural areas. There are 100 million women with the National Rural Livelihood Mission today. But what is more important, 50 million are now credit linked. 5 करोड़ महिलाओं को बैंक ऋण उपलब्ध है. Credit is available with them. Now, what it has done in a very quiet way is to promote better care of at marginal and farmer and small farmer land holdings. It is not necessarily got to do with rye, paddy and wheat growing. It is much more to do with horticulture, vegetables and all. Across most states, including my home state of Bihar, Jivika Didis do lease in land to start off vegetable cultivation. Lot of the intercropping for mangoes and vegetables in Jharkhand, whole lot of other experiments which have all been in rain-fed areas. The strength of the initiatives of civil society, livelihood mission, MGNREGS resources, wherever it has worked in rain-fed areas. It has provided protective irrigation through the farm ponds in many cases. Though, of course, very rightly said, the treatment must be total. A standalone farm ponds technologically has its weaknesses. If we are actually, that is exactly why when the government set up a committee for MGNREGS on how to reform it, what more can be done, I had the privilege of chairing that committee and working with Ashok, Pankaj, Sonalde Desai and others. Our principal recommendations pertain to doing a comprehensive ridge to valley, not an ad hoc system of generating wage employment, but a comprehensive ridge to valley. Our clear focus was on water conservation as a method to do what we are trying to do. Unless and until we are able to conserve water better, we will not be able to beat the climate challenge that we face. So clearly, was it possible to focus much more on water conservation, much more on plantations? States like Telangana, a permanent plant nursery in every Gram Panchayat. Now, the governments do many things wrong, but one good thing that the Telangana government did under their campaign for Harit Haram, Harita Haram, was this provision, and I have had a chance to see at least 35 to 40 Gram Panchayats in Telangana, and all of them had a permanent plant nursery. The gains are shown by the increase in tree cover, not forest cover, in tree cover in Telangana and in Bihar. The Haryali mission in Bihar, where Jivika and Narega resources, livelihood mission resources were all put together to generate and for plantations on scale along embankments, along roads, along wastelands, and so on. So, friends, there could be examples across sectors, but how do we move forward? Can we accept the principle that Meghalaya has accepted simply because the forests were also on community lands? That principle, that Gram Panchayats, which say have 70% of their cover under natural forests, can our grants for the Finance Commission build that into its principles? We do per capita transfers. Can we do a green transfer as well to recognize that those panchayats who have more natural forests there, they need to be compensated for having done so? We are talking about incentives. Let's not talk in broad generalities. Let's get down to the basic tags. How does one ensure that the Gram Panchayat development plan in a forested region has the benefit of additional resources from whichever source? Why should efforts at climate action be centrally mandated? Why can it not reflect in a Gram Panchayat development plan? My counter question on this, because we've seen this with the compensatory afforestation and many other things. If we do everything centralized at the cutting edge level, what is happening? I think civil society and communities have to be partners in the planning and implementation of what we do for green technologies, what we do at the cutting edge. So I think there is a comprehensive debate needed where we take the climate action debate not from the belting glaciers, but right down to your field. That is what will make a difference. That is when you'll be able to come up with schemes or interventions which even communities can appreciate and understand. The covenant with the people, a point that I just made a little while ago, I think it's very important. There have been instances, especially in regions of natural forest, where you have reserved forests and protected forests. Again, the distinction between a reserved and a protected forest, I'm sure all of you understand the technicalities of it. But the most simplest definition that I heard was one of the Manki Mundas saying, reserved forest वो है जहां जिस चीज का अधिकार दिया जाए तभी है, नहीं तो कोई अधिकार नहीं. और प्रोटेक्टेड फॉरेस्ट वो है जहां पे अधिकार है अनलेस की मना किया गया. There is a negative list there. This is the simplest definition I could hear of a PF and an RF. Now, if that is the case, can we define, when we want communities to engage in plantations, for example, that what will accrue to them at the end of it? So unless and until we are transparent with communities that this is how, over the next 10, 15 years, we are going to roll out programs which help us to move faster. I'm not getting into the area of climate finance. I'm sure there are many others who would like to, who have much greater understanding of the subject. But at the cutting edge level, civil society and communities is what can deliver for you the carbon related challenges that you are trying to overcome. Nobody else. Once we understand this, and once we develop our initiatives right down to that level, we will see change. I'm not saying that everything that MGNREGS does in this sphere is perfect. It is far from it. There are many imperfections. But we need to work on it, because that is the way forward, where you recognize individual farmers. You know, lot of issues without realizing the consequences of what we are trying to do. Individual beneficiary schemes. I still remember, I'll not name people. No, let's do only community works. Don't they realize that marginal and small farmers in tribal pockets, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and all, are very poor people. Very, very poor people. And in any case, even the individual beneficiary schemes mandates that you will cover the tribal and the scheduled caste households before you cover the others from marginal and small farmers. So I think the whole process of a water cycle which is stable, of land and forest which is comprehensively thought through for the next 15, 20 years in terms of rights, and a system where you are able to communicate to a local farmer what he or she can get out of the interventions which are proposed. That, to me, is an answer to the nature-based solutions, the debottlenecking that you wish to do. These tongue twisters make it very difficult to work at the field level. ऐसा ऐसा शब्द बनाते हो जो कोई ना समझे. So that we'll remain limited to a small group of people who understand what climate action is. Take it to the people. You'll find the solutions there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for that fascinating opening address. I think importance of science and technology at one end, use of the head, but very importantly, connecting with the hearts of the communities and looking for solutions from them for challenges that may not necessarily have been created by them, I think is something that we take away. I think it's also logical that on this day we wish you a National Civil Service Day. We congratulate you on the National Civil Services Day for the 21st. I think we celebrate Environment Day, Earth Day, but we should celebrate the civil servants also. So thank you so much for coming here and joining us today. It's usually a hard act to follow, but Mr. Sundararajan has taken up that challenge. How do you speak after Mr. Amarjeet Sinha? I think somebody like Ravi Sundararajan is somebody who would aptly kind of come and do that. For people who may not necessarily know him fully, Mr. Ravi Sundararajan is a seasoned professional with over 40 years of experience in the Indian oil industry. As a board director at Shell, he played a key role in establishing Shell's presence in retail, aviation, and bitumen sectors. Mr. Sundararajan led Shell's retail business in India and Oman, driving growth amongst many challenges. He was also part of Bharat Petroleum's restructuring and deregulation efforts. Passionate about social causes, he has worked with NGOs working with persons with disability and championed diversity and inclusiveness at Shell. Now focused on sustainability, he leads Shell India's nature-based solutions and advanced biofuel projects. Mr. Sundararajan holds degrees from IIT Madras and in Calcutta. And it'll be interesting to see how a person 40 years of experience in the oil industry talks about sustainability and issues like that. Might seem paradoxical, but I think that's a very fascinating view to have. So welcome, Mr. Sundararajan.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I particularly like the part where you said it's a tough act to follow. It makes my job a lot more easier. And undoubtedly so, because it is really a tough act to follow, Mr. Amarjeet Sinha. He brought a lot of experience into the room in terms of his own career. And I picked up quite a few things and I couldn't agree with him more in terms of the need for a participative community to do these projects. The more ownership there is of these projects, it becomes a lot more successful and sustainable over the longer run. And I really would like to kind of listen to him more to see the insights that he has picked up, because these are exceedingly valuable in the way we design the projects. On my part, I would like to really talk about the energy, because when we talk about nature-based solutions and when we talk about carbon sequestration and things like that, the energy sector is going to play a huge part in this whole energy in its diverse forms. And what's happening in the energy sector, the choices that we make in the short term and the long term, are really going to impact the amount of greenhouse gases that are generated in the atmosphere, and the need to compensate it with schemes like NBS and a whole lot of other technologies. We live in a state of flux today. The world is a state of flux. There are wars being fought in the battlefields, in trade and commerce. Almost everywhere we have a lot of every single country is trying to make things better for its own population, sometimes at conflict with each other. So this is actually going to give rise to huge amount of challenges in addressing the issues of climate change. If you look at India, it's no different. I mean, the number of people below the poverty line who need to be brought up, the living standards have to be brought up, is one of the pressing needs of any government in power. And it has been happening for over a period of time with different levels of success. So we'll not get into those kind of things. But I think everyone recognizes across the spectrum that we have to bring people above poverty line, improve their economic conditions and things like that. And there are very huge choices to make today. There are limited budgets. There's a need for prioritization. There's growth and poverty alleviation versus focusing on the environment. We have the conflict between the short term and the long term. We have a lot of societal pressures. So if you look at these issues, there are a huge list of issues. Now, if we look at the signatories to the Paris Accord, 195 countries said that they would limit the total warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius. How are we today? 2024 is the first year when it has breached 1.5 degrees centigrade. So there are a few, this gives rise to a few questions. Have we missed the bus on climate change? Where are we now on the climate journey? And what can we do about it? And what is the way forward? So the evolution of the energy system is actually going to have a huge impact on the whole aspect of climate change. And the evolution of the energy system is going to be impacted by technology and how technology is adapted going forward. To help us understand how the energy sector is going to transpire the whole in the few years to come, Shell actually published its energy scenarios earlier this year, and they came up with 3 different scenarios. First is called Archipelagos. As the name kind of says it all, small groups of people working towards their own self-interest, and is characterized by low social trust and security concerns. There is a slowdown of digital technology. A lot of the overhang of the Ukraine war is actually is felt on this, where countries are trying to provide cheapest energy possible to their solutions at the cost of environment. And this is actually counterbalanced by societal pressures, where organizations like Pradhan, CSL, and all of the people gathered in this room are debating the issue of climate change. So there's a lot of societal pressure for climate change to address the issues of climate change. Horizon is a scenario where there is a comprehensive policy framework and strong societal and political support, and we harness technology in a coordinated manner for decarbonization. The third is another extreme. The third extreme is called surge, in which climate change is not so much of a priority. The priority is economic progress that comes about with the advancements of technology, especially of artificial intelligence. So it takes us to a different level of economic prosperity, and that actually has its rub-off on the energy system. Artificial intelligence comes into the energy system to make it more efficient, and therefore, as a consequence, you have less emissions. So it's a fairly circuitous way of doing this whole thing. Now, if you look at these scenarios, they are actually, influenced by geopolitics. They are influenced by technology, and they are influenced by technology. And there is an interplay of all these forces, which ultimately will decide how much, in which way forward the whole thing would move. So if you look at some examples, if you take LNG, for example, if you look at geopolitics and take LNG. Now, LNG is seen as a substitute for coal. And when you substitute coal, you will reduce the amount of emissions that are going there, and the need for solutions would come down. the biggest demand center will be China. And the biggest new supplier is going to be the United States. So there's no marks for guessing how these two countries are placed with respect to each other in terms of geopolitics. You look at renewables and batteries. 75% of the supply chain is actually located in China, and that has its own consequences. The raw materials required for solar panels have actually been cornered all across the world by China. So there is going to be a dominance of one country in these kind of areas as well. If you look at the allocation of clean capital, around 85% of the clean capital across the world is in the Western countries. And in China, of course. China is one of the biggest players, undoubtedly. Just to give you a sense of scale, there are more solar panels in Netherlands than there are in the entire African continent. And you know how many days of sunlight you have in the Netherlands and how many days of sunlight you have in the African continent. It makes it a very simple question to ask whether these panels are in the right places in the world and are they being used to their capacity. If you look at technology progress, everyone accepts that it is going at a very fast pace. This will impact the energy system going forward, and the energy system's efficiency will improve significantly. Efficiency and effectiveness will improve significantly, thereby reducing the energy intensity of in almost every aspect of life. So what are the big conclusions in these scenarios? The first is that growth in demand for energy is driven by rising population and prosperity. What we believe is that by the year 2050, the total demand for primary energy will increase by 25%. And at least 33% of the population of the world will be living much better lifestyles in terms of, the people compare it with Western European lifestyle, 33% of the. If you take 33% of India's population in 2050, that will be around 500 million people. And you can imagine how much energy is required to meet the demands of 500 million people living that kind of lifestyle. Political and social tensions are evident today as countries strive to deliver a new era of economic growth, ensure energy security, and address climate change. Artificial intelligence technologies held societal change. We are seeing evidence of it. There are a lot of electric vehicles. There are a lot of electrical, appliances. There's a rapid growth of data centers across the world. All these things are going to change the requirements of energy and the way that we all live in future. And when we look at all this, one thing is clear, especially to a person who spent quite some time in the oil industry, that oil and gas are going to remain relevant for decades to come. It may not be a very good news to an audience like this, but I think we have to be pragmatic in terms of looking at how do we take our people. I mean, you take the case of India, how do you take the people in terms of economic progress? Mr. Sinha spoke about consulting the poorest of the poor, consulting them, taking them in the path of economic progress. I mean, the whole road network that India has built over the last few decades has been one of the transformative initiatives that the government has taken. And it has actually brought a lot of improvement in the living standards. So these standards, today the lifestyle is very aspirational. It's not just aspirational for people living in the cities, it's aspirational for people living in the remotest of places, because communication has actually reached the far corners of the world, in the depths of the villages and the deepest places. What we believe is that oil will reach its demand, a peak demand sometime in the mid-2030s, and then there will be a long, slow tapering off. LNG will reach its peak sometime in the 2040s, because you must look at LNG as a substitute for coal. And that will actually help to improve the emission levels going forward. Renewables will grow rapidly. Renewables and nuclear energy will help to decarbonize a lot of the energy systems. Biofuels, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and carbon removals are required for the energy system to manage its lower emissions. So if you look at biofuels, today biofuels are at around 4% of the total fuels consumed all over the world. It is expected to only triple in quantity by 2050. It's actually a small amount for the total amount that is really required. When you look at all these systems, what is left and what is ready is really nature-based solutions and renewables. These are the only two initiatives which can actually be implemented today, which have an impact on the longer term, which have an impact on the shorter term. And the sense of urgency to implement this is all the more if I tell you that what we expect is that the total emissions will peak in the next decade or so. The next decade or so will be the peak emissions that the world has ever seen. And after that, it will start tapering off across the scenarios that are painted by Shell. What we see is that the carbon intensity will halve by 2050. And what we also see is that there is a very good, very real chance of meeting the 1.5 and 2 degrees threshold in 2 of the 3 scenarios. So where is the world today? There's a lot of conflict. Not everyone is moving in the same direction. If you look at California, the CO2 emissions have come down to nearly a third from 2005 on the back of electricity and on the back of batteries. The emissions has come down to nearly a third. In Poland, for example, and Europe talks a lot about renewables and things like that. Coal-fired power generation makes up for half to 2/3 of the electric supply. And there are less than 100,000 electric vehicles on the road. If you see Brazil, there are hardly any electric vehicles on the road, but they compensate with biofuels. And they compensate with biomass in industry, and they use a lot of hydroelectric power generation. In Shenzhen, China, all public transport are electric vehicles. So just to give you an idea of scale, can we not kind of convert the whole world to electric vehicles? Today, there are around 1.5 billion cars on the road, of which only 70 million are electric vehicles. So it is going to take a long time to convert this whole. Now, if you look at what the IPCC reported in 2021, to achieve the limits on global warming, there is an emission budget of 500 gigatons. And we are, from 2021 onwards, we have already consumed 200 gigatons. We are consuming at the rate of 40 gigatons per year. That's the amount of emission that is being put up into the atmosphere on an annual basis. So there's very little time. I think that's the message that we need to take away from here, that there is very little time for this. So if we are to address peak CO2 emissions within a decade, the best options immediately available are renewable energy and natural carbon sinks like NBS. I think we need to recognize this, and we need to kind of act on this quite fast. Where is India on the energy transition journey? Despite a lot of disruptions in the global markets, India has made substantial progress in transforming energy system towards low carbon. It's gone beyond some of its original 2030 targets, updating its NDC commitments at COP26. If you look at what the government has done to improve the general investment climate in this, I think they have they have actually done a lot of things which support active investment in NBS. There is a stated policy of the government to cover 33% of the land area with forests. The government of India has recently started talking about organic farming in a major way. They've already introduced the carbon credit trading system and the green credit system. Just this week, the Gazette notification is out on the greenhouse gas emission intensity target rules They've just been notified a week ago. As Mr. Sinha said, this has to be a participative exercise. And we see this as it was a hugely participative exercise. The audience in this room comprised of people from different walks of life, looking at different aspects of this whole carbon capture game, from the implementation partners to the regulatory people to the to the carbon consultants. We have the whole range of people, and we have a few investors as well. And I think it's necessary for all of us to work together in harmony to try and make this as successful as possible. And personally speaking, I would say I'm actually more interested in making this more successful in India than in making it successful anywhere else. And what I would really try to advise is that let us look at how our systems and processes are. Have we done everything that we need to do to make it attractive for an investor to really invest in the NBS space in India? So there are NBS is a long gestation activity. We're talking of 30 years, 40 years. And there are a huge amount of risk. The costs for any investor are highly front-loaded. And break-evens happen after a decade or so, if at all it happens, because there are a lot of risk in terms of forest fires and those kind of things which are really not quantified. The carbon credit commodity markets are quite nascent. Carbon credits is not widely understood. There are many things that are not understood outside this room. I think there's a lot of things that need to be done there. There is a lot of dependence on communities for extended periods of time. So the people who are doing these projects need to have a very deep connect with the local communities. There should be the system of trust, which Mr. Sinha also spoke about. And there should be a long and sustainable relationships which are built over years and decades of activity in this. It's not going to be very easy. How best do we do it? How has a regulation fared? So if you look at the state of Indian forests and the spread of forests across private and government land, needless to say, the government is the biggest holder of land today. And we need a policy which acts quite fast, and alignment between the central policies and the state policies to make these things happen, and happen quickly, because the available funds need to be brought into the country quickly. How soon can we put in place Article 6 mechanisms in India to make it more attractive for investors to bring in money into it? Are the standards clear and pragmatic? Are they doable? Or are we operating to shifting goalposts? I mean, there is a lot of debate in society whether some of the things that we are doing constitute greenwash, whether we are kind of fooling the public in terms of preserving existing forests. And laws are being tightened after projects have been approved, which makes it really difficult for people to kind of keep changing the process, the practices, the design of the project fundamentally. So I think there is a need for trust and the need for integrity of projects. These are two sides of the same coin, really, and both of them have to be managed before you can really get into this. Can the market really differentiate between good and bad credits? I mean, Mr. Sinha spoke about the need to involve communities. Apart from the communities, we have a huge issue on biodiversity. Across across species, we have I mean it's around 1.6 lakhs which are in the IUCN red list of species, something like that, and so many of them are threatened. How do we bring back those species? I'm sure the sessions to follow, we will actually talk about a lot of these issues. They will be deliberated at length. But I think what is really necessary is for us to carry these messages back to the people who decide on various aspects of this this huge puzzle of carbon credits that we are talking back, and try and influence them. Because I personally like to see more and more investment coming into India. There are many things which work for India. It's called the biodiversity hotspot. It's probably got the biggest need in terms of the population living below the poverty line and things like that. And it'll be a great thing that if we can really do something tangible to improve their livelihoods. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope you have a very good session today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sundararajan. I think this was a very practical and pragmatic kind of address, which delved into some of the challenges, also shared some of the possible solutions and way forward. I think on World Earth Day, where we're talking of our power, our energy, and the relevance of renewable energy and clean energy, I think Mr. Sundararajan's address is extremely relevant of how a country and perhaps a region that is looking to move forward, move people out of poverty into on the road to prosperity. How do we ensure that we do our work in a more pragmatic and sustainable manner? So growth doesn't have to come at the cost of sustainability, or sustainability doesn't have to come at the cost of growth. So that's an interesting way of looking at things. And I think he's raised a lot of questions for the panels to follow and address. So that has been very useful. So thanks again, Mr. Sinha and Mr. Sundararajan, for a fantastic start to the session. You have left a lot of material for people to think about and maybe take forward at the end of the day. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. There is a small token of appreciation, not just simple thanks.